Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. I'm Nick. It's Tuesday, time to talk about some new releases coming out this Friday, January 19th. There's a little over 300 albums coming out this week. I got 12 on my list for today. There's a bunch of links down below. Make sure you check them out. There's links for the Vinyl Den Facebook group, for the merch page, for the Spotify and Apple Music playlist that I put together every week, and the Patreon page. Make sure you go check all that out. Of course, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time I release new episodes. Like I said in the intro, there's a little over 300 albums coming out this week. I'm only going to talk about 12 on the show today, so if there's something I don't talk about, make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you're looking forward to picking up this week. And like always, if you're unable to find any of these in your local brick and mortar stores, I'll put links down below in the comments section. All these should be available online. The big release for me this week, of course, is the new Green Day album, Saviors. This is their 14th studio album. It's going about $28 online. There's a bunch of different color variants of this. I think there's last time I looked, I think there's at least 12 to 15 different color variants of this album. Only one is a gatefold. It's listed as the deluxe album. It's going to run you a couple bucks more. I think it's like $30 for the gatefold. This is an album that this is the follow-up to their 2020 album, Father of All, which I think is kind of widely seen as, if not the band's worst album, one of their worst albums. I guess I'm kind of cautiously optimistic when it comes to this release. They've released four singles off it already. I've listened to the first three. I like what I hear. I think what I've heard off of those singles, I think sounds better than Father of All. And Father of All is an album that's kind of grown on me a little bit over the last couple months. I still kind of, I really don't like the album still. I think it's really the only album that Green Day has ever made that I just didn't like. But, I'm optimistic for this one. I'm really interested to check it out this week. I do have a copy of it on pre-order. This is the first time the band has worked with Rob Cavallo since they worked with him on the trilogy albums, Uno, Dos, and Tre back in 2012. So, like I said, I'll check it out this week. I'll do a review video on that one. And then you've also got the new release from Neck Deep coming out. This is a self-titled release. This is their 5th studio album. I know there's pink and orange versions of it that are going to be available. Both going to run you about $25 online. If you're unfamiliar with them, they're a Welsh punk band. They've released, I think, 4 albums over the last 10 years. I've slowly started getting into their stuff over the last several months. It probably wasn't until... it probably maybe late fall when I started getting into their music. I started hearing them more on Sirius XM, and it's kind of gotten me into the band a little bit more. So it's definitely another one I'm going to grab this week when it comes out. There's big music on vinyl release coming out this week. This is Living Color Vivid. This is their debut album from 1988. It's going to be on black vinyl. It's going to run you about $36 online. So this is the third time the MOV has released this. I know they released it back in 2012. They released it in 2020 also. Both times it was on colored vinyl. It was super limited. I know that 2020 pressing was on pink vinyl. I think it was only limited to 1,000 copies. I never saw a copy of it in store, so it's great to see this getting a wider release. It's a great album, and one that I know a lot of people out there have been looking for. It's an album that's really known for a couple of singles off it. So many other great tracks on there. Something a lot of people out there probably don't know is this is actually produced by Mick Jagger. So, and I was surprised to find that out, several years ago when I found an original pressing of this album. But definitely one that I'm glad to see get reissued this week. I might grab it, even though I've got an original pressing of it. I might grab that MOV release also because the MOV releases sound absolutely fantastic. So I'd love to see how it compares to the original pressing. And then you get this big 12 LP box set coming out from Dire Straits. This is live 1978 to 1992. So this was released back in November of last year. I think it was just released in Europe, though. Looks like it's getting a U.S. release this week also. But this is all remastered and extended versions of some of their bigger and best-known live albums and performances from those years. It's a lot of money to drop for a box set. It's going to run you about $250. But a couple of these live albums haven't been available since the 80s and early part of the 90s. So if you're a big Dire Straits fan, it might be a cool one to look at this week. There's a couple of really interesting looking jazz releases coming out from Blue Note this week. I'm not familiar with either one of these albums, so I'm definitely looking forward to both of them. But the first one is Bud Powell, Amazing Bud Powell Volume 1. So this was first released back in 1952 as a 10-inch. And then in 1956, it released as a 12-inch, had 7 additional tracks on there. So this is part of the Blue Note Classic series, which I've just discovered so many great jazz albums over the last several years because of this series. It's going to run about $28 online. It's got a bunch of great jazz musicians on here with him also. It's got Fats Navarro on here, Sonny Rollins, which I absolutely love Sonny Rollins stuff. Tommy Potter, Roy Haynes, Max Roach, Curly Russell. Now, I'm familiar with Bud Powell. I've heard some of his music before, but I'm not familiar with this album in particular. But this is all mastered by Kevin Gray from the original analog tapes. It's pressed at optimal. I'm sure this thing's going to sound absolutely fantastic, just like all the other Blue Note albums do. And then this next one, I'm not familiar with this artist or this album, but this is Clifford Brown Memorial album, released back in 1956. This is this was released shortly after his death earlier that year. I think this album was released in like November, and he died earlier in the year. So he had a really short career as a band leader. These were recorded over a couple of sessions back in '53. And he's got some great musicians on here also. Just a long list of people. I won't go through all of them, but you got Lou Donaldson on here, Percy Heath, Philly Joe Jones, John Lewis, Art Blakey, which I absolutely love Art Blakey, and like I said, a bunch of other ones on here. It's also mastered by Kevin Gray. It's also pressed to optimal. Like I said, I'm definitely looking forward to both of those releases this week. The next album is another one that, for one reason or another, I've never checked out. I'll definitely add it to my stream list this week, though. But this is Jerry Garcia, Run for the Roses, released back in 1982 as Jerry's fourth and final solo studio album. I think he would go on to do some stuff with the Jerry Garcia band after this. But as far as like solo stuff by himself, this was his last album. I'm never been the biggest Grateful Dead fan, so maybe that's why I've never really gotten into his solo stuff. I think there's like one big album from the Jerry Garcia band that I listened to, but outside of that, nothing else. But this was going to run you about $23 online. It's not a bad price. But there was an expanded edition of this album that was released quite a few years ago now. Had 6 additional tracks in there. I think 5 of the 6 were covers, so maybe there's like licensing issues that go along with it. But I'm not sure why they didn't release the full release of this album, include all those additional tracks also. I think would have made a better release. But anyway, like I said, I'll stream it and check it out this week. And then this next one is really interesting. This is Robby Krieger and the Soul Savages. This is a new album that Robby Krieger is doing with his new band. Of course, Robby Krieger, one of the last, I think him and John Densmore are the last 2 remaining members of the Doors that are still alive. He's a great musician. I think Robby is really underrated as a guitarist. He's done a bunch of great stuff over the years. Of course, everything he did with the Doors. But this has 10 instrumental tracks on here. They're like jazz fusion and some funk and some psychedelic rock. And I don't know, it's going to be really interesting. Another album I probably won't pick up this week. It's going to run about $24. I should say that. I probably won't pick it up this week, but I'll definitely stream it and check it out. The next album is a pretty interesting one because I don't remember there being a whole lot of hype about this album when it first came out. And then when I finally listened to it several years later, I was actually pretty impressed by it. But this is Alan Parsons On Air, released back in 1996. It was his second solo album. This is a music on vinyl release. It's going to be on translucent red vinyl. It's going to run about $38 online. Alan, this is an album so this was released in 96. So it's probably at least a decade later by the time I got around to listening to it. And, it's a really fascinating album to kind of go through. I think it's actually one of Alan's best albums. Like I said, even though I'm not a huge fan of his music, I definitely put this up near the top. But there's always a concept when it comes to Alan's albums. The concept for this album is the history era exploration. Like I said, it's really kind of interesting to kind of go through and listen to this album all the way through. It's, not one I'll pick up this week, but I'll, if I can grab a copy of it, on sale somewhere, I will. But I will say that when it comes to music on vinyl releases, they're released out of Europe. So if you're looking for an MOV copy or an MOV release, it's normally about a week or so before they start trickling into the States. So it might be a couple of weeks before you see this one hitting the shelves in your local stores. And then the last 3 releases this week are all part of the Rhino Records Start Your Year Off Right series that they've been doing. So they released a bunch of them early part of the first week of this month. There was like 15 or 16 albums that came out. Last week there was only 2. This week you're only getting 3 albums. But the first one is The English Beat, I Just Can't Stop It, released back in 1980. It was their debut album. It's going to run you about $27 online. It's going to be on Magenta vinyl. This is one of the more influential ska albums of the early part of the 80s. Just a great album to kind of go back through. So what you're getting for this Rhino release is the English version. So in the U.S. is released as The English Beat. In the UK, this is released as just the beat, and then in Australia, it was released as the British beat. So the US version had a great cover of Tears of a Clown by Smokey Robinson on it, and that's what this version has on there also. So, I highly recommend at least streaming it and checking out this release this week. And then the last two releases from Rhino this week are Volume 1 and Volume 2 of the same series. So you get Nuggets, Original Artifacts from the first Psychedelic era, 1965 to 1968, Volume 1. This was released back in 1972. It's going to run you about $42 online. It's a 2LP release. It's on Psychedelic vinyl, which is just it looks like it's a red splatter on yellow vinyl. It looks kind of cool. This was an RSD release, I think, a year or two back. I'm not sure what color it was on when it was released. I think it was also a box set that was released also. But so this is a compilation of psychedelic and garage rock from that mid to late 60s era. Some really great stuff on here. A lot of stuff I've never heard before. I'm not the biggest psychedelic fan, but it's definitely interesting to go through and stream this one and check it out. Because I listened to it back when it was released for RSD, and that was the first time I'd heard it before. I considered picking it up, but I don't think there's enough on there that really makes me want to grab a copy of it. But this was originally planned as an 8LP series that would focus on that period. And the label kind of scrapped that idea, decided, look, we'll just release this 2LP release and be done with it. So that's what was the only thing that was available for years. And then in 1998, they released Volume 2, which is the second release that's coming out this week. This is also going to be on Psychedelic vinyl. This one looks like it's on a purple and red splatter on blue vinyl. So this is, like I said, in 1998, they released this big CD box set. I think there was like a total of 5 or 6 different series of this album that they released in that box set. You get Volume 2 coming on vinyl this week. I don't know if they got plans to do other releases in the future, but like I said, this is more of the same stuff that's on that Volume 1. Some really good stuff. There's some other stuff that I'm not a huge fan of, but it's also going to run you $42. It looks like there's a couple of really good releases this week. Well, that's all I got for this week, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. Make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you're looking forward to picking up this week. I think there's a bunch of great stuff coming out this week. I've got that Green Day order, of course, on pre-order. And no, I've only got one copy of it on pre-order. I've got that Neck Deep on pre-order. I'll probably grab a copy of that Living Color if I can find that copy this week. I'll probably grab both of those jazz releases. There's a couple other ones I'll stream and see what I think of them. But I don't know. Let me know what you guys are looking forward to this week. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me the old thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. That's all I got. Until next time, keep on spinning. Peace.